I put out what we have.
Would you check that out? That's a grown man's boot. A real grown man. That there's the biggest man ever's boot. Right inside that glass. That's some macho shit. But we're in Montana now. What'd you think we'd be seeing? It was exactly 19 days since I landed in Salt Lake City. I had been through the Utah deserts and the Colorado mountains and the Wyoming prairies. And now I'm practically in Canada. And the further I get from Salt Lake, the more tough and manly this trip gets. I love it. I feel like my beard's getting thicker and my voice is getting deeper. Billings, Montana is at the end of the northern trek. From here, it would all be west and south again. And I was kind of sad about that. But no shedding a tear. This is tough guy territory, damn it. It's a pretty nice truck, huh? It's my truck. We're at the top of Billings, Montana, our first stop here in the state of Montana. Then we're going to drive around Billings, and we're going to talk about what makes this place tick. How does it exist in its Mountain West lifestyle? A lot of people say Billings is a rough and tumble place and is bad. Some people say it's depressing here. Well, we're going to drive around, and we're going to find out if that's true. Heck, might even meet a couple cowboys, too. Partner. Pretty big. Trucks. There's trucks everywhere.
Real quick. Like this.
What's up?
Sorry, brother. Billy.
That's right.
How you doing, Jeremy?
How you doing?
God bless you, my friend.
So I was talking to my cousin who lives in Montana. His name's Tanner. He's an amazing photographer and a real macho Montana man. I was like, Tanner, I'm going to be coming up to Montana this summer. Where does everybody think the worst place in Montana is? I want to show people what Montana thinks is bad. He was like, Billings. He didn't have to think about it. I was like, okay, Billings it is. And the internet seems to agree. Billings has a bad reputation among Montanans. Some people call this the stepchild of Montana, which is mean. It's also the biggest city here, so it's possible some people up here just don't like it because it's big. And it has liberals, and welfare, and drug abuse, and homelessness. But nonetheless, if you look around the internet long enough, you're going to find lots and lots of negative things about this place. So where in the Montana are we, anyways? Well, we're in Yellowstone County. Billings is kind of on the edge of the eastern prairie. West of here is more mountains and more money and more liberal. And east of here, well, you'd better have a gun and a strong woman. That's no man's land, mister. Billings has about 120,000 people these days. And that's by far the most of any other Montana city. Nowhere else in this big old state are you going to find a place with close to 100,000 people. Now we're going to talk about why this place is bad soon. And I'm going to show you bad things. Because some of you sickos out there are only here to see that. But you have to wait. I have to set the tone of the place. So since this place is way out east and nowhere near a ski lodge, it's less touristy and less desirable for the millennial snowflakes. Of all the big cities in Montana, Billings is the most conservative. Close to downtown, maybe not so much, but just outside of town, and it is red. More than 60% of folks here voted for Trump last time, and I'll bet even more do the next time around. And that means lots of macho stuff. If there's 4 things Billings people like the most, it's guns, drinking, gambling, and pickup trucks. All over town, and it's pickup trucks. Good Lord. Montana's just behind Alaska for truck sales. 3 in 4 vehicles sold in Montana is a truck. I think the other 25% are side-by-sides. Even the Uber drivers here love their trucks. One morning I was working out and I saw an Uber driver in a filthy truck that had cow shit on it dropping somebody off in front of my hotel. And then he rolled coal after he dropped her off. Just a little coal, not a lot. I wish I had it on camera. There he goes. Look at that dirty pickup truck Uber. Only in Montana. Then I went upstairs because I heard some commotion. And I was like, oh, it's just a bunch of trucks pulling up. Every vehicle parked on the street was a big old truck. Good for you, Montana people. And then they all got out to have a manly talk on the sidewalk. That's a Montana real men work meeting. No suits and ties on them. I bet they all had coffee breath.
And he'd look at it, make sure it's right at the halfway mark. Yeah, and you take a little more. Okay.
Montana people love to drink and gamble. Well, for more than half the year, that's all there really is to do. I spent my fair share of time in Billings casinos and bars. We'll get to that later. And guns. There's gun stores everywhere here. Look at this. A gun store right next to a casino. See? I'm telling you. In another video, I talked about how in Wyoming, everybody has a gun. And it's totally safe. Like, people down there know how to be responsible with guns. And if everyone has a gun, then nobody does anything stupid. But there's a lot of people here in Billings who can't be trusted with a firearm. Get all them guns. You may not know it, but Billings is the whitest city in America. 88% of Billings is some shade of Caucasian. It's also 4% black and 4% Native American. Okay, so what's the problem here, anyways? Well, if you look at stats and you look around town, you can kind of see what people are talking about. The crime rate here is higher than most places in Montana. People tell me that you'll hear gunshots a lot at night on the weekends. And there is a lot of drinking and drugs. Like a lot. One website said Billings has the highest rate of depression of any other U.S. city. What? And Montana has the 3rd highest suicide rate too. I know the winters are pretty bleak up here, but wow. I think it's the drinking and gambling and the long winter days. and the whole I have to be tough on the outside that make people up here so depressed. But then another website said Billings has the 4th highest well-being. So I don't know who to believe, or if you can believe any of them. People in Montana call it a dirty town. I think the refineries are part of that. I mean, it ain't as purty here as it is over in snobby Bozeman or Missoula. That's for damn sure. And when you get here, you go from really pretty land to this big stinky factory right off the highway. Kind of gives a bad impression. But that's the smell of money, son. That's oil and sugar beets, damn it. But is it a dirty place? Kinda. There's a big part of town that's got some rundown motels and liquor stores and some boarded up drab. Sort of the blue collar, lower middle class kind of scene. I've seen worse. A lot of Billings doesn't feel like you're in Montana. It feels more Midwest. Billings doesn't have a lot of glamorous jobs, but there's a lot of money to be made here if you work hard. And saving money here isn't very hard as long as you stay out of the casinos. But the big 4 in Billings are railroad, coal mining, power plants, and oil refineries. And then outside of town, it's mostly ranching. Here's one of the refineries. It's just right down the road from downtown. This place was a much bigger deal up until the oil bust in the 80s, when some of the oil companies moved their headquarters away from here. Folks inside there make about $50 or $60K a year. Not bad for this part of Montana. There's also some pretty big hospitals around, but for the undoctored, it's truck driving, call centers, or factory work mostly. The sugar beet factory isn't glamorous, but it's steady scratch for somebody young. I asked people in town about downtown. A few of them told me that downtown Billings used to be kind of raunchy and run down. Well, I wasn't here then, but sure looks like they fixed the place up. And from a glance, downtown looks clean. There's kinda a lot going on, and it's sorta safe-ish, I guess. I mean, that's the cleanest alley I've ever seen. If this was in LA, well, you know what it would look like. But when you look closely at downtown Billings, you see the problems. Now, I like to get back and explore, and I'm out at night a lot, so I see a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't normally see. Hey, sorry.
Throw back us.
Just poop. In the day, it's not so bad, but at night, there's sketchy people on every block down here. It's either a bum or a homeless guy or some weirdo that you don't want to come your way. And a lot of the downtown smells like pee. Sucks. If that's weed, that's okay, because that's legal here. But if that's crack, that's not okay. Free country, I guess. We met this guy earlier. I was filming all the trucks downtown, and he and his homeless friends called me over. They were like, "Hey, talk to us." He told me he's a Crip from the reservation. I was like, reservations have Crips? Part of the problem here is Billings is only about 40 miles from the Crow Reservation. Some security guy I talked to told me it used to be the first of the month when the natives would come down here and blow all their money on slot machines and heroin. But now, It's all the time. Somebody from the reservation just drops them off, and they get stuck here and they can't get home. So they get all wasted and wander around, and then the cops pick them up and take them a few blocks from downtown and just throw them out of the car. Okay. They are a concern. They get drunk and are otherwise a nuisance, and they add to the homeless problem here. And I read somewhere that the homeless Native Americans drink hairspray, like to get their fix. What the hell? Hairspray? I'd heard about people drinking mouthwash or hand sanitizer. Is that a Montana thing? Good Lord. One morning, I saw a Native American guy walking down the street with a bow and arrow. I was like, is there a deer downtown? I have to say, I can tell why people that live in Billings are frustrated with the downtown situation, because it's Montana. They're like, it didn't used to be like this. What's happening? Sorry. Here's one of the worst things I saw in town. People told me, if you want to see bad, go down to the Bourbon Street Hotel. It's just a few blocks from downtown. It's the Crackhead Hotel. So I went there. And it was bad. And then I learned, wait, this is a hotel casino? I bet their money goes to crack, and then gambling, and then get my life in order. That's always last. I figured that I'd see some of America's issues out this way, but it wouldn't be as bad as the worst places I've visited. So after some perspective, I can say Colorado is infected, Wyoming is not, and up here in Montana, it's creeping into public more and more. And people in Montana don't like that very much. Legal weed doesn't help. There's dispensaries like this all over Billings. People in Colorado told me, as soon as we legalized weed, that was the first toke towards terrible. It brought in all the lowlives. They never left. Hopefully that doesn't happen here, but I think it kind of is.
What's it like being high?
I don't know, Mappy. I don't take drugs. They're bad. Coors is all I drink.
Can you shoot guns on drugs?
Mappy, no! You gotta take firearms seriously. Did you take that gun safety course that I gave you? Well, hell, that was pretty good, partner. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? If you ask somebody in Billings where's the bad part of town, a lot of people are going to say the south side of town. Now, this is probably going to sway you on whether or not you think Billings is a bad place. I mean, I'm going to show you other bad things, but when you get to see what the rough hoods look like, you're going to have an opinion. I'll just spare you. It's not that bad. There's not a lot of boarded up or gangs roaming the streets. It's fairly clean. It's just generally poorer, and there's some issues with drugs and unemployment. Some of the roads are unpaved. But it's here that you'll hear most of the gunshots, or where cars get stolen the most, or where the news is usually talking about. But from what I hear, they actually arrest people here. Good for them. This side of town's cheap. It's a good starting point for the people who want to move to Montana but aren't yet loaded. citywide, homes are getting close to 400K. But in here, it's far lower than that. Anyways, make your decision on how you feel about the worst place in Montana after you've seen it without its makeup on. So what's the nice side of Billings look like? This. Most of the nice side of town's on the west side, where all the growth is taking place. There's some really nice neighborhoods here. On this street, homes are in the $700K to $2 million range. Billings is growing super fast. Look at this chart. And you list your house, it'll be on the market for 10 days. That's all. I know, right? It's Montana. Everybody's sick of liberal land, wants to move here. This is the only place in the state that has decent jobs that a lot of people can afford. We were on our way into town the first day, and I just had to pull over. I was like, look at all these cheap model home displays. They were on both sides of the road. That's what they have to do here to make affordable housing. I guess this is what people want. Cheap tract homes. Me. Across the street from Big Sky Homes is J&J Homes. More of it. I saw this all over Billings. Cheap tract home lots. We're trying to build. This is the future of Montana. Farmers selling their land so they can pack in these little hoods and apartments everywhere. And home prices here have basically doubled in the last 10 years. Montana people hate this, by the way. But what are you going to do? Everybody wants to be here. Cheap housing for the win. While out and about in Billings, I did a lot of drinking. I mean, that's what you do here. When you're in Hawaii, you sit on the beach. When you're in New York, you look at buildings. When you're in Montana, you drink and gamble. Bartending has to be a steady gig here. There's bars everywhere, and every single one of them has gambling in it. Montana people love to play slot machines. Love it. Love it more than whiskey, some of them. They'd rather stare at these things than talk to their spouses. I'm sure of that. It seems like there's a place to gamble on every block here. They're in bars, they're in gas stations, all the low-end restaurants have them. They're next to churches, next to gun stores. We saw that already. There's little ones and big ones and nice ones and crummy ones. And they call these casinos. They are not that. One of their bar casinos is called Muzzleloader. That's so Montana. Here's the most interesting one we saw. We went into a place called the Second Shift Bar and Casino. Because, when you get off work, you have to come in for the second half of your day. This place has a bar and a casino in it, and a damn liquor store inside. I've never seen that before. Ever. Where you can buy bottles of booze at the bar? Too much, Montana. Too much. Cowboys are a total white thing. This part of Montana loves them some cowboy and stuff. And they love to shoot things too. Now, I didn't see any of that really in Billings, but I went to the Billings Walmart. Wrangler jeans are the only jeans to wear here. Dudes wearing cowboy hats in the Walmart. This cowboy took his lady on a date to Walmart. Good for him.
I think trashy cowboys are hot. They can wrestle me anytime.
Well, I don't think you're their type, woman. Especially with that thing on your damn head.
Me too, everyone. Me too. Report him.
So on the first night, I took my driver to the Montana Brew Pub. Came highly recommended. Cool place. Of course, they have a casino inside. For dinner, I had a salad and some poutine, everyone. If you don't know what poutine is, it's very popular in Canada and Montana. It's basically fries with cheese and gravy on top. Really good. Not healthy, though. And then after poutine, we went and watched some stand-up comedy at a place called Craft Local. I was like, they have stand-up comedy in Montana? That's cool.
I have a hard time giving money to homeless people if they're overweight.
It was okay. The best part was when one comic made fun of South Billings. He was like, South Billings sucks. And then another comic who was there got all butthurt and he yelled out, "Hey, I'm from there. Stop being insensitive." I think the whole room was comics, except for me and my driver. The next day, we drove around the hood, and then we escaped to Al's Bootery. That's where I saw the world's largest man's shoe. His name was Robert Wadlow, and he was 8 feet 11 inches tall. Can you imagine? He was only 22 when he died, because his glands were all messed up. That's why he was so tall. Look how big that shoe is compared to mine. And that Skechers shoe is even bigger. But that's just for shits and giggles. Nobody ever needed that shoe. Montana's premier steakhouse. For dinner that night, I went to a highly recommended, kinda swanky place called Jake's. And I got another steak salad. It's been steak every day since I left Denver. Except for that one time I tried chicken in Rawlins, Wyoming. Bad idea. Now, the bathroom in Jake's was not Montana looking to me. Bet there ain't no shoe in there. And then I went to a bar called the Rainbow Place after dinner, and they did have a Montana looking bathroom. Dang, Rainbow. Feel like I'm back home. Tattoos seem to be a thing on the women here. I also saw more than a regular share of homeless women on the streets here, too. Every Montana town's got to have a Mexican joint. And at the end of the night, I sat there for what seemed like an hour and watched a train completely block the south side of downtown. I thought that was amusing. And this train has been going 1 mile an hour right through downtown for about 20 minutes. And nobody cares. Just another detour, I guess. It's hilarious. Downtown Billings. Don't worry about the trains, everybody. So I got up the next morning to get some shots of downtown. And I was like, it's not that bad here. But it's not going to get any better. The drugs and crime and homeless crap is just going to keep growing. It's happening all over the country. This place ain't going to solve anything. But of course, Billings, Montana isn't nearly as bad as America's real holes. And you would probably guess that. So far on this trip, I saw Colorado's worst place to live, which is rank. I saw Utah and Wyoming's worst places to live, which ain't too bad, actually. And now I just saw Montana's worst place to live. Well, hell, this place ain't that bad. Rather be here than California, Florida, or Chicago. To hell with them. The reason I went to Billings was because everybody in Montana says Billings is the worst place to live. I have family that lives in Montana. That's what they told me. The internet seems to think that. You know, I go there and it just looks like a regular middle class place to me. I can understand why people in Billings are probably frustrated with it used to be better and now it's not as good as it once was. And in Montana, we don't have all this crap, but now it's starting to come there. How do you feel about Billings?
I like Billings. It's a great little town. Um, it's not as crazy as I would say like Bozeman or Missoula is, because I think that's a little bit more crazier than Billings is. Um, I think I think it's just nice, like you said, middle class town, middle class city. You know, being the biggest city in Montana, of course. So um,
How much worse has it gotten from when I hear it's not as nice as it once was? How has it changed?
I think it's like you said in past videos. It's like Californians moving out here. There's a lot more people from out of state moving in now. Because it used to be like a quiet one horse town kind of thing scenario, you know. You hear that a lot with the people, like you said, just saying it's not great and stuff and all. But I think it's great, honestly. You know, it's just enough city for me, you know, enough country and enough city, so it's good balance. So
Hmm. How do Montanans feel about change?
they're a little stubborn about it, but they eventually go with the flow, you know. And some Billings people are kind of stubborn that way, you know. But they're still good people, though. They still help each other out.
So, okay, so the cost of living, it's one of the cheaper places that you can go where there's a decent number of jobs because Montana's prices have gone through the
Yeah,
roof. And the places that are affordable, nobody wants to be because there ain't shit to do for work. And then Billings is kind of like that middle ground where you've got some jobs and
yeah.
somewhat affordable, right?
Yeah, it's. I mean, the rent I pay for myself as a private landlord, and I think it's the cheapest, honestly. But if you look at these property places, they're they're starting to raise up and up and up now because there's more developments now. Because a lot of the farmland that's outside of town is getting bought up by all these development places now, and so the rent is starting to jack up now. Yeah, I mean, they say it's cheap. I mean, it's a lot cheaper than Bozeman and Missoula. I'll tell you that right now. It's just a whole different environment in those towns than it is here. So it's more conservative here and stuff. And so, but it's more industrial too. Like you said, there's a lot more jobs. There's like 3 different refineries nearby. There's steel and there's all kinds of other jobs that people can afford this stuff. So
Hmm. Do people in Missoula? I'm sorry. Do people in Billings worry about the change that's happening with the homeless stuff and the crime and the drugs? It looks starting to look like Denver a little teeny bit.
it is a little bit, yeah, especially down in the downtown area. Uh, the meth has gone up just a little bit. There's been an occasional murder here and there. I mean, there's been like a small streak of shootings and stabbings lately, but it's been quiet lately. But you know, who knows? We might hear another story again tomorrow. Something happening, you know, somewhere downtown. It's always in the downtown area too. It's like every time I turn the news on, it's always downtown area. So
Hmm. Are people there worried that things are going to get to a point where they're going to be like, "Oh God, here we go"?
yeah, I mean, there's some people who think that the tents are going to start popping up, just like the bigger cities that you've shown. Um, I don't think it's going to happen for a long time yet. So I think it's going to stay pretty quiet until then. I mean, we still got your transients out down that way and stuff. So
Hmm. What do Montana people think of the rest of America? Because a lot of people have an opinion on Montana, but we don't really know what y'all think of us.
I don't know if they look out the outside world that much. They're kind of tunnel vision, you know. So um, we enjoy loving the state. I mean, we enjoy the outdoors and stuff. And I think people just like to stay focused on what they're doing here. But I'm sure they'll you could ask them about other states, like you mentioned California or Washington or Oregon or something. They'll pipe up about it, you know. But they don't know, they don't realize what it's like out there, obviously, because they've never been outside the state very often. So they just do what the news says. is going on. So
Well, there's a lot of people that are thinking about coming your way, and
mhm.
I spent a week in Montana kind of driving around to kind of show people what it's like. And for the most part, it's a lovely place. It's desolate in a lot of places. I could see
It
the
is.
draw. What is a typical Montanan do for entertainment usually, besides pushing slot machine buttons?
Yeah. Every time a new building gets built in this town, I swear it's like, oh, it's gonna be a casino, isn't it? Yep, sure enough, it's another casino, of course. Come on now. So yeah, that's one thing they do. But there's also the outdoors. You got me who's like summer camping and stuff and fishing and stuff. Then you got the people who are really into the winter stuff, skiing, snowboarding, stuff like that. There's also lots of events in town too. There's theater. They got their own orchestra. They have the Babcock Theaters, and the one that shows all the old movies, which is cool. You can see movies that from the 80s. I love doing that. So seeing those movies for the first time on the big screen was awesome. There's a ice skating rink at the Heights. There's I'm trying to think of other places. There's the zoo, of course, Zoo Montana. That's what my hat's advertising. So there's a few other things to do. There's also lots of hiking trails up in the rims too. There's a lot of bike trails. The bike trails are amazing. I like those. I do those once in a while. There's also lots of things to do downtown too. And there's always, besides all the casinos, there's lots of restaurants. I can't even try every restaurant in this town. There's so many of them. There's so many downtown I've never even heard of. It's just so many of them. So eventually I'll just get to try them all one day these days. So.
Yeah. Can you give people an idea on how much the home prices have gone up there?
I haven't looked recently, but I've heard they're pretty high. I've talked to people who said they're pretty high in Billings, live in Billings, compared to like smaller towns nearby. So I would say, just to guess, I'm gonna guess like 150, 200,000. I guess just an average home. Not for the ritzy houses. I mean, I'm sure those are even more. I'm not sure exactly the lower end is on that.
Yeah, it's getting up there. Home prices are, Chad, and there's people that they're worried that. I mean, I spent a couple days in Bozeman, and there are hundreds of people living in campers that are working folks. They're not bums.
Oh yeah.
They're people that just can't afford to live there. And so there's people in Montana that are like, enough's enough. Can we just be normal here and not have an influx of people that are just going to come in here and try to change everything? Damn it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, they're afraid that they're gonna grow leaps and bounds like Idaho next door to us is. It's just craziness. I'm sure that's gonna spread eventually. I mean, I've seen this town grow where it's gonna meet up with Laurel, which is like 10, 15 miles away, and it's like we're almost merging almost out there. The west end of Billings and the Laurel town, just kind of merging slowly. I think in about 20 years we're gonna Laurel's gonna be part of Billings. Pretty much. Just like Lockwood is and stuff. So,
well, I tried to emphasize in the video, people in Montana look down upon Billings, and I can understand why. It's kind of a blue collar. It's all beat up in some parts.
Yeah, and being right in the middle of the state too, between the eastern and the western half of the state. The western half's the beautiful part. The eastern part's just kind of deserty, nothingness. Ranchland. So yeah, I can see that, but they do say they call it the trailhead of Montana, so that's where you kind of start your adventure. So that's what they say.
Yeah, if that's your bad place, then that's good for you because this looks like a regular place to be.
Yeah, I think it's a lot better than some other towns I've seen. I mean, I would say like my Miles City and Glendive are kind of the lower end, but they're still good towns. But it's mostly ranch people that live there. So
Are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. And I can also help you find your new house too. Email me and I'll work with you on not just helping you figure out where to move,
but I can help you find your perfect home too. That's right. I know awesome, reliable agents all over the country, and I'd love to connect you to somebody who can help you search for that perfect home. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great. You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.